Title: Ashes of the Vow. Chapter 1: The Perfect Frame. Autumn painted the city in 1,000 shades of gold. Trees along the avenue outside the Whitmore residence shed their leaves like silent tears, carpeting the sidewalks with memories of a summer now gone. Inside the house, laughter echoed from the kitchen. Sarah Whitmore's voice, light and melodic, teasing her husband, Daniel, as he tried to flip pancakes with more enthusiasm than skill. They had been married for 7 years. To anyone who looked in from the outside, they were the epitome of a perfect couple. Daniel, a respected architect whose name adorned skylines, and Sarah, a talented art curator with a soft heart and an eye for broken things. Their home was a warm blend of modern taste and nostalgic touches. Reclaimed wood, mismatched chairs, paintings from obscure artists Sarah discovered in dusty galleries. Their love had always seemed effortless, the kind others envied. But even the strongest structures can hide the subtlest fractures. Daniel leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've got flour on your nose." Sarah laughed, eyes dancing. "You say that every time. Because you always do." That morning they danced in the kitchen while coffee brewed. Daniel kissed her forehead and promised he'd be home by 8. She whispered, "I'll wait for you," as he walked out the door. He didn't know that behind her smile lay guilt. That the text she received moments after he left, "He's gone. I miss you," would sit unread on the counter, the screen going dark just before she walked back in. Sarah had met Mark Stanton 3 months earlier. He was the new acquisitions director at the gallery downtown, freshly arrived from New York, with a reputation that preceded him. Sharp, intuitive, and dangerous in the way people who truly listen can be. Their connection was instant, but Sarah tried to ignore it. First, Mark was everything Daniel wasn't. Spontaneous, emotionally intense, full of stories and wild, impossible dreams. He saw parts of her Daniel no longer noticed, or had never tried to see. When Sarah spoke, Mark didn't look away. He watched her, really watched her. And for a woman who had spent years becoming invisible in a marriage where comfort replaced passion, that gaze was intoxicating. Their affair began on a rainy Thursday. An innocent dinner turned into confessions, confessions into a kiss, and the kiss into a night neither of them could undo. Afterward, Sarah cried in the shower, biting her knuckles to stay quiet. The water didn't wash away the guilt. She told herself it was a mistake, that she loved Daniel, that it wouldn't happen again. But it did. Again and again. That evening, Daniel arrived home to candlelight and wine. Sarah kissed him with trembling lips. She was trying. God, she was trying to choose him. She sat across from him, listening to him talk about the skyscraper he was designing, laughing at all the right moments, but her eyes betrayed her. She was haunted by something she couldn't name. Later that night, while Daniel slept, she stared at the ceiling, Mark's message still unanswered. "I miss you." She picked up the phone and replied. Chapter 2: A Beautiful Lie. There are moments in life when you stand at a crossroads and know, absolutely know, that the next step you take will change everything. Sarah stood at such a threshold, barefoot in her kitchen, phone in hand, Mark's reply blinking on the screen like a dangerous heartbeat. "Come to me." She typed "I can't," then deleted it. Typed "I love my husband," then deleted that too. Instead, she typed 3 words that would mark the beginning of the end. "Where are you?" Mark lived in a loft above an old bookstore on Claiborne Street. The kind of place that felt like it had a soul. When Sarah entered that night, she was drenched in rain and hesitation. Mark wrapped her in a towel without a word and kissed her like she belonged to no one else but him. They made love by the window as lightning fractured the sky. She didn't cry this time. It scared her how natural it felt. How much like home. When it was over, Mark traced the outline of her shoulder blade with his finger. "Why do you go back to him?" he asked. Sarah stared out at the streetlights, their glow trembling through wet glass. "Because I gave him my forever." Mark said nothing. He didn't need to. Silence hung heavy in the air, like smoke after a fire, the echo of something already lost. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his drafting table, eyes red from staring too long at lines that refused to become buildings. He told himself he was tired. That's why Sarah had seemed distracted. That's why her kisses had a hollow aftertaste. He brushed it off. But his instincts, once so finely tuned, were beginning to twitch. The next morning, while Sarah slept beside him with the face of an angel and the guilt of a traitor, Daniel noticed a text flash across her screen as she turned over in bed. Mark Stanton. Last night was everything. A coldness took root in Daniel's chest. He didn't say anything. Not then. He simply stared at her. The woman he had built a life with. The woman he thought he knew. Over the next week, Daniel began to unravel quietly. He didn't snoop. Not at first. That wasn't him. He was a man of principles, a man of reason. But one night, curiosity twisted into suspicion and suspicion into action. While Sarah showered, he unlocked her iPad. Same passcode as always. 1978, the year her mother was born. There, like shattered glass beneath a spotlight, were messages, photos, voice notes. Her entire double life displayed in brutal clarity. Mark. Wish I could fall asleep beside you tonight. Sarah. I wish I never had to leave your bed. Daniel stood there, frozen. Not angry, not yet. First came disbelief. Then a grief so sharp it knocked the breath from his lungs. The woman he loved, the woman he had built a future with. She was already living in someone else's arms. That night, he didn't confront her. He kissed her goodnight with trembling lips and turned away before the tears could give him away. Sarah, thinking she'd gotten away with another lie, whispered, "I love you," and fell asleep beside the man whose heart she had just shattered. Daniel stared at the ceiling until morning. He didn't sleep again for 3 days. Chapter 3. The Ghost Between Us. Mornings in the Whitmore house became rituals of silence, an opera of gestures and smiles choreographed to hide the truth. Sarah, radiant and restless, hummed while preparing breakfast, her hands delicate over coffee mugs and toast. Daniel, meanwhile, had become a man of shadows. He watched her in quiet study, noting the way she checked her phone when she thought he wasn't looking, how she tucked her smile away like it was a secret she wasn't ready to share. There was a ghost living between them now. It had Mark's voice, Mark's scent, Mark's laugh that lived in the folds of Sarah's expressions. Daniel saw it when her eyes drifted into daydream. He recognized it when she flinched at his touch, not in disgust but in guilt. He had planned to confront her that Sunday. He had rehearsed the words. "How long has it been? Do you love him? Why?" But when he stepped into the bedroom and saw her asleep, curled in a fetal position, something inside him faltered. She looked so small, so fragile, like the woman he had fallen in love with, not the stranger whose betrayal lived like a tumor inside his chest. Instead of waking her, he sat on the edge of the bed and wept into his hands, shoulders shaking quietly. At the gallery, Mark was growing impatient. He had begun to press her for answers. "Are you still lying to him?" he asked one afternoon as she adjusted lighting on a new exhibit. "I'm not lying," she said, avoiding his gaze. "I just haven't told him yet." Mark scoffed. "That's a lie, Sarah. Every day you wake up in his house and kiss him goodbye. It's a lie." Sarah didn't reply. Instead, she turned away, her breath catching as tears threatened to fall. Mark softened and took her hand. "I love you," he whispered. "But I won't be your secret forever." And that was the problem. Mark wanted a future. Daniel was the future. And Sarah was split in half, dragged between the man she had promised her soul to and the one who had set her heart on fire. She told herself she was still deciding. But in truth, her indecision was its own answer. Daniel began documenting everything. Not because he wanted revenge. 'Cause he wanted proof. Proof that the life he thought he had lived wasn't a hallucination. That he wasn't going insane. He downloaded their text conversations from the cloud. He listened to one of Mark's voicemails over and over again, memorizing the rhythm of the man's voice. Sometimes he thought about driving to the gallery, looking Mark in the eyes, asking him what he had that Daniel didn't. But instead, Daniel did what he knew best. He built something. Only this time, it wasn't a tower or a dream. It was a plan. Sarah came home late one night. She claimed it was a work dinner. Her coat smelled faintly of Mark's cologne. Daniel didn't mention it. Instead, he poured her wine and asked about the exhibit. She hesitated, then launched into a well-rehearsed lie. Daniel listened, nodding thoughtfully. Then he said something that made her pause. "You seem happy lately," he said. "More alive." Sarah's heart stuttered. He smiled softly and reached for her hand. "Whatever it is, I'm glad. I've missed that spark in you." Her eyes filled with tears. Guilt. Overwhelming, soul-rattling guilt. And for the first time in weeks, she almost told him everything. Almost. But cowardice is often dressed in love. And fear wore Daniel's wedding ring. She kissed him instead. Slow, desperate. As if trying to convince them both they still belonged to each other. But Daniel wasn't fooled. That night, he walked into his home office and stared at the framed photo of their wedding day. Sarah in white, laughing in sunlight. He remembered how her voice had cracked during her vows. How she'd said, "You're my safe place." He took the frame from the wall and smashed it on the floor. Glass shattered. Just like his heart. Chapter 4. The unraveling thread. The fracture had grown into a canyon. Daniel moved through his days like a man underwater. Present yet distant, haunted by everything left unsaid. He still kissed Sarah goodbye each morning, but his lips no longer lingered. He still brought her coffee, but no longer asked how she slept. Everything between them now was muscle memory. No more warmth, no more wondering. Only the dull ache of endurance. Sarah noticed the shift. She felt the cold in his silence, the space he left between their bodies at night. But she convinced herself it was stress. Work. No. Not guilt. Not her betrayal. Because to admit that meant acknowledging the ruin she had laid at their feet. But guilt is like fog. It thickens until you lose your way. Mark had grown distant too. Less tender. More expectant. He wanted answers now. Deadlines. Commitments. "I'm not your secret anymore," he said one night, standing by the gallery window while rain slammed against the glass like fists. "I told you I need time," Sarah replied, arms crossed, voice low and trembling. "You've had time, Sarah," he snapped. "You keep saying you're going to leave him, but you go home to him every night. You sleep in his bed. It's not that simple." "It is," he said. "You either love me or you don't." Tears welled in her eyes, and Mark didn't soften this time. "You can't keep both of us. This isn't a novel. People get hurt." And with that, he walked out into the storm. Sarah stood there, soaked in fluorescent light and panic, knowing he was right. Someone was going to get destroyed. She just didn't know who yet. Meanwhile, Daniel had hired a private investigator. He hated himself for it. The decision felt like a final betrayal of the man he used to be. The trusting, idealistic husband who believed love could conquer all. But he needed truth. Cold, undeniable, photographed truth. And it came. 2 weeks later, a manila envelope was slid across his desk. Inside were images that would live in his nightmares. Sarah, holding Mark's face in her hands. Sarah, slipping out of a hotel. Sarah, barefoot in his apartment window, laughing in a way Daniel hadn't seen in years. There were timestamps. Receipts. Undeniable. Unforgivable. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He sat in silence for nearly an hour, the envelope open before him, the weight of 7 years of marriage pressing into his ribs like broken scaffolding. Then slowly he stood, walked to the bathroom and vomited. His grief came quietly, like a drowning man who no longer thrashes. The next morning he made Sarah breakfast, just like he used to. French toast, strawberries, whipped cream, her favorite. She blinked in surprise when she came downstairs. "You made all this." "I missed us," Daniel said softly. Sarah hesitated. "Then Saturday, I missed us too. For a moment the lie tasted sweet. But every bite she took, every smile he gave her, was laced with arsenic. He watched her closely. Not with love. With study. He was building something. Not a building. Reckoning. That weekend, Daniel told her he had a business trip in Chicago. She kissed him goodbye at the airport. Told him to be safe. Told him she loved him. Then drove straight to Mark's apartment, thinking she had the house to herself for the weekend. What she didn't know was Daniel never boarded that plane. He sat in his car outside Mark's building for hours. Watched her laugh again. Watched her touch another man like she used to touch him. He took no pictures this time. He didn't need any more proof. The final nail had been driven in. Back at home, Sarah returned Monday morning. She brought Daniel coffee in bed. He thanked her. He smiled. He didn't mention the flight he never took. Instead, he asked her a simple question. Are you happy? Sarah froze. Of course I am. Are you sure? He asked. Yes. Beep. Aren't you? He nodded. I think I used to be. And that was the first honest thing either of them had said in months. That night he didn't sleep. He stood at the window while she breathed beside him. He had built cities, towers, skylines, but nothing had prepared him for watching his own marriage collapse like a bridge with its supports cut. He had loved her with everything he had. And still she chose someone else. Chapter 5. The confrontation. The house was quiet again, too quiet. A silence that felt loaded, like the still air before a thunderstorm. Sarah had begun to feel it in her bones, though she couldn't name it. Something was shifting. Daniel's eyes lingered longer. His questions had subtle teeth. The warmth in his voice was there, but hollow, like someone imitating love. It unsettled her, but she was too far gone to step back. The lies were layered so deep she no longer knew where truth ended and performance began. Daniel waited for the right moment. He didn't want an argument. He didn't want a screaming match. He wanted clarity. He wanted her to bleed truth with her own tongue. So he planned it like an architect would plan a demolition. With precision, with patience, and with absolute control. It was a Wednesday evening when he finally lit the match. They were sitting on the couch watching an old movie. Sarah's head rested against his shoulder, her breathing even. It was a moment that could have passed for peaceful, for healing. But Daniel's heart was beating like a war drum. He muted the television. Slowly, only. Sarah looked up at him. Something wrong. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, I know about Mark. Time stopped. She blinked. Once. Then she whispered. What? I know, he said again, his voice as steady as stone. I've known for a while. Sarah sat up, her face draining of color. I don't know what you're talking about. Daniel's laugh was quiet. Cruel. Don't do that. I've seen the texts, photos, the hotel receipts. I watched you, Sarah. I watched you. Her hand covered her mouth. Tears welled immediately. He stood, walking a few feet away, trying to contain the shaking in his hands. His entire body was humming with rage he hadn't let himself feel until now. How long? He asked, still not facing her. How long have you been sleeping with him? Sarah's voice cracked. Daniel, How long? He barked, turning on her. She flinched like he'd struck her. 3 months, she whispered. 4. Daniel, I never meant to. Don't give me that, he snapped. Don't you dare say you didn't mean to. You meant every text, every kiss, every lie. He collapsed back onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I built my life around you, he said, quieter now. I trusted you with everything. I would have done anything to make you happy. But you went looking for something I thought we still had. Tears streamed down her face now, her breath catching in sobs. I didn't plan it, she choked. It just happened. He listened. He made me feel. What? Daniel snapped. Made you feel alive. Wanted. Like I didn't. Like 7 years meant nothing. She didn't respond. Silence again. Bloody. Then Daniel stood, wiping his face. I want you out of this house. Sarah's breath hitched. What? You heard me. You're not sleeping in this bed another night. You don't get to lie next to me with his touch still on you. Daniel, please, can't we talk about this? Go to therapy. Something. He turned and his eyes, once so soft, were stone. You burned this bridge the moment you chose him over me. She sobbed openly now. I didn't choose, Daniel, I love you. He laughed. No. You loved the version of me who didn't know. Who still kissed you like he trusted you. She packed a bag that night. Quietly. Like a thief. Daniel stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching her with the eyes of a stranger. Not a single tear on his face. Where will you go? He asked. Sarah paused. Mark's, I guess. Daniel nodded. Then I hope he's worth everything you just lost. When she left, she didn't look back. Not because she didn't want to, but because she knew if she did, she'd fall to the ground and beg him to forgive her. And he wouldn't. Daniel stood at the window for hours after she left. The night swallowed everything. But he didn't cry. He had no tears left. Only ashes. Chapter 7. The last table for two. The cafe on 6th had been theirs once. It was nothing fancy. Wooden tables, brick walls, soft jazz in the background. But it was sacred in its simplicity. Their second date happened here. So did their first real fight. Daniel once wrote, I love you, on a napkin and slid it across the table like a middle school dare. Sarah still had that napkin. Or she had, before she packed a single bag and left their world behind. She arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in muted colors. No makeup, no jewelry. Just her, raw and unarmored, as if hoping simplicity might save her now. Daniel was already there. Back corner table. Same spot they used to sit. 2 black coffees between them. He looked thinner. Like time had been taking things from him quietly in the background. His face was unreadable, neither cold nor warm, just neutral. Sarah sat down. Silence followed. Not hostile. Just, hello. He spoke first. Thank you for coming. She nodded. I didn't think you'd want to see me. I didn't, he said. Not until last night. Sarah looked down. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for an apology. Her lip trembled. I just want to know why, Daniel said, voice low but sharp. Not the vague version. Not the safe version. I want the truth. All of it. Sarah swallowed hard, staring into her cup. It didn't start as anything. You have to believe that. I wasn't looking for someone else. But you found someone else. She winced. Yes. Was I not enough? He asked. Was our life boring? Did you feel trapped? No, she said quickly. You were always good to me. Too good, probably. Then why? Her fingers fidgeted with her sleeve. She looked like she was unraveling in front of him. I felt invisible, Daniel. Somewhere along the way I just disappeared. You were always busy. Your buildings, your projects. I'd talk and you'd nod, but you weren't there. And then Mark showed up and he saw me, really saw me. And I made one bad choice. Then another. And suddenly I didn't recognize myself anymore. Daniel sat with that. Let the silence stretch again. You know what hurts the most, he finally said. It's not that you cheated. It's that you shared yourself with him. Your laugh, your dreams, your worst moments, and then came home and pretended with me. I wasn't pretending, she whispered. Yes, you were. You had one foot out the door for months. You were just too afraid to say it. Her eyes filled. I didn't want to hurt you. You did hurt me, he said, voice cracking for the first time. You killed us. Long aching pause. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Letter. She slid it across the table. I wrote this before you messaged me, she said. I wasn't going to send it. But I think you should read it. He took it silently. I want you to know, she continued. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I needed you to know that I loved you, that I still love you. But I think I broke something in us that can't be repaired. Daniel nodded slowly, eyes on the letter. Then back to her. I believe you still love me, he said. But love isn't always enough. Not after this. Tears slipped down her face. I understand. They sat in silence for a while. Two people who used to share everything, now reduced to shared grief. Then Daniel stood. He didn't hug her. Didn't touch her. He just looked down and said, "Goodbye, Sarah," and walked away. She stayed at the table for nearly an hour after he left, staring at the steam rising from his untouched coffee, clutching her own hands to keep them from shaking. When she finally stood to leave, she left something behind. Her ring resting silently on the napkin between their cups. Daniel sat in his car outside the cafe, gripping her letter. He hadn't read it yet. He didn't know if he ever would. Chapter 8. Echoes in the empty rooms. The house was unbearably still. Daniel walked through it like a man in a museum curated by memory. Her scarf still hung on the hook by the front door. A single coffee mug sat in the sink, hers floral with a chipped handle. The smell of her shampoo still haunted the bathroom tile. He had every reason to box it all up, to erase her from the space like chalk from a board. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not when the house felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Every room echoed with her. Laughter in the corners. Tears in the walls. Years of moments stitched into the fabric of his daily life. He spent hours lying on the couch, phone off, blinds drawn. Friends called. He ignored them. His mother left voicemails that started cheerful and turned desperate. He couldn't find the energy to reply. He wasn't just grieving a relationship. He was grieving a future that no longer existed. Sarah stayed with Mark. Physically, at least. But emotionally, she was untethered. Mark tried to be patient. He tried to hold her, to comfort her, to remind her that what they had was real too. But he couldn't compete with the ghost of Daniel. Couldn't fight the parts of her that still lived in that old house. They argued more now. Little things. Toothpaste caps, late nights, unanswered texts. One night, after another fight, Mark stared at her from across the room and said, "You're not really here." "I am here," she said quietly. "No, your body is. But you're still in love with him." She didn't deny it. Mark left for 3 days after that. Didn't tell her where. When he came back, something between them had died too. He no longer reached for her hand. She no longer asked where he'd been. They lived in silence, like Daniel and Sarah once had. History repeats itself in cruel shapes. Daniel returned to work. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed the distraction. His colleagues tiptoed around him. His assistant stopped asking how he was. He designed a library. A beautiful, sweeping space full of glass and arches. He poured his grief into every line, every sketch. Came out of him like blood. One night he stayed late, the office empty, the sky outside streaked with orange and indigo. He sat in the dark, watching the city move beyond the window. Then, without meaning to, he opened her letter. It was 5 pages long. Written in blue ink, with the occasional smudge from a tear. It didn't say anything he didn't already know. But somehow, seeing her words laid bare, in her voice, in her handwriting, shattered something inside him again. She wrote, "There is no excuse. I betrayed the one person who never stopped believing in me. And maybe I was trying to find a version of myself I'd lost. But in the process, I destroyed the only place I ever truly felt safe. You were my home, Daniel. And I set fire to it." He read it twice. Then again. And then he cried, gut-wrenching, body-heaving sobs that left him gasping. The kind of cry that doesn't ask for healing, just release. Weeks passed. Sarah moved out of Mark's place. She said it was temporary. But they both knew what it really meant. Mark didn't try to stop her. He kissed her forehead as she left and said, "I hope you figure out who you are." "I hope I do too," she whispered. She rented a small studio apartment across the river. It was sparse, quiet. No framed photos. No laughter in the walls. Just 4 bare walls and the sound of rain tapping against the window at night. She started therapy, journaling, tried cooking for herself again. But some nights, she still pulled out her phone and hovered over Daniel's name. She never typed anything. Not anymore. Daniel, too, was healing. Slowly. He jogged in the mornings. Started reading again. Sometimes he caught himself smiling at nothing, and it scared him. Not because it felt wrong but because it felt possible. Like maybe someday joy could return in a different shape. He met a woman at a friend's dinner party. Her name was Elise. She was kind, warm, nothing like Sarah. She asked about his work. He told her about Prague. She laughed at the right parts. He didn't fall in love. But he didn't shut the door either. And that was something. One evening, Daniel stood in the bedroom doorway, the same one Sarah once packed her bags in. The sun had just dipped below the skyline, casting the walls in gold. He looked at the bed, the window, the dresser. Then he picked up her scarf, still hanging where she left it, and let it fall into the donation box. Chapter 9. What remains? Time does not heal all wounds. It only teaches you how to carry them. 6 months had passed. The seasons had shifted. Leaves turned, the air crisped. Autumn whispered through the city, and both Daniel and Sarah lived in separate silences now, shaped by absence and introspection. Daniel's home had changed, though subtly. The furniture remained the same, but the air felt different, cleaner, colder. The bedroom they once shared was no longer a shrine to what had been. The mattress had been replaced. The photos on the walls were new, black and white prints of landscapes he'd taken on a trip upstate. He'd gone alone, driving for hours until the road disappeared and all that remained was pine and wind. For 2 nights, he slept under a sky choked with stars and said nothing. No phone, no music, just wind through trees and the slow unfurling of grief. He hadn't told anyone about the trip. It wasn't for closure. It wasn't for healing. It was to remind himself that he still existed outside of her. When he came back, he removed the last of her belongings from the house. The sweater she left draped on the office chair. The earrings in the bathroom. Her copy of Jane Eyre with the dog-eared pages. He didn't throw them away. He boxed them, taped the lid shut, and left it in the attic. Not because he hoped she'd return, but because forgetting her completely would be a second kind of betrayal. Not of her. Of the man he used to be. He still loved her. He always would. But now he understood something brutal and liberating. Love without honesty corrodes. Sarah's apartment was small and gray and often filled with the soft hum of nothing. She hadn't seen Mark in nearly 3 months. Not after she left his place with a duffel bag and a strained, "I need space." He didn't follow her. He didn't call. And that silence was, in its own way, a gift. She went to therapy every Thursday. It was the only thing she'd stuck with. Week after week, her voice grew stronger, her excuses fewer. She peeled herself open, layer by layer, exposing the rot beneath the choices she had made, the ways she had silenced herself, even in a marriage filled with love. "I think," she told her therapist one day, "I kept waiting for someone else to tell me who I was. First my parents, then Daniel, then Mark. I don't think I ever really asked myself. I was just so scared of the answer." She paused, then added quietly, "Maybe that's what made me destroy everything. I didn't know how to live inside a life I hadn't built with my own hands." She'd begun painting again. Nothing ambitious. Abstract pieces. Dark strokes. Red, black, deep violet. Her therapist encouraged it. One of them, chaotic and wild, had earned a quiet compliment from a neighbor. Sarah cried when she heard it. Not because it was flattering, but because it was the first time in years someone saw her for something that had nothing to do with her relationship to a man. Still, she missed Daniel every day. Not the comfort. Not the routine. The way he held her when she was anxious. The sound of his laugh. The way he read lines out loud from books he liked and looked at her, waiting for her smile like a child showing off a drawing. She'd written him a letter. Not to win him back. She didn't believe she had the right, but just to thank him for the years they shared. For the safety. For the softness. But she never sent it. What good were words now? Then, one cold November evening, fate twisted its knife. Daniel was walking down 8th Street, coat tight, coffee in hand, when he saw her. Outside the bookstore. Not with Mark. Alone. She was browsing the front table, hair longer now, tucked into a dark wool scarf. Her hands brushed the cover of a book, and Daniel remembered how she used to read the last page first, just in case it ended badly. He stopped, stared. She looked up. Their eyes met. Was not frozen, not angry, just still. She stepped forward slowly. Hi. His voice took a moment to find. Hey. She smiled, soft and sad. Didn't expect to see you here. I could say the same. She glanced down at the book, then back at him. You look good. You too, he said. And meant it. He noticed how different she seemed. Calmer. Not sad, but quieted. Like someone who had been through a storm and didn't want to rush back into sunlight just yet. How've you been? She asked. He hesitated, then shrugged. Alive. Healing. Working. She nodded. Same. Long pause. Then, without thinking, Daniel asked, Do you regret it? Sarah's lips parted slightly. Her breath caught. She looked him straight in the eyes and said, Every single day. He nodded. They stood there, past and present bleeding between them like watercolors too close to the edge of the page. I'm sorry, she added. Not just for the betrayal. For not telling you when I should have. For letting it rot in silence. Daniel swallowed hard. And I'm sorry I didn't notice you disappearing. That broke something. Not anger. Something softer. More human. A mutual understanding of everything they had done wrong. Not to each other, but to the love that had once held them like shelter. I hope you're okay, she said, voice cracking slightly. I will be, he replied. I hope you are too. I'm trying. He looked at her one more time, like a man closing the cover of a book he once lived inside. And then just like that he smiled. A real smile. Not bitter. Not broken. Just letting go. Take care, Sarah. You too, Daniel. And with that he walked away. She stood still for a moment, watching him disappear down the sidewalk. Then she opened the book she had picked up. Read the last page. It ended in heartbreak. But it was beautiful anyway. Chapter 10. The quiet after the storm. A year passed. 12 months of distance. Of rain on rooftops and empty holidays. Of unexpected laughter and nights that still echoed with the ghosts of what used to be. Daniel no longer checked the box in the attic. He didn't need to. He remembered her without pain now. Like an old melody he'd once loved that no longer stirred tears, just a quiet nod of recognition. Life had unfolded slowly and unevenly, but it had moved forward. He'd started seeing Elise. More steadily now. They weren't in love, not yet, but they were honest, and that was a foundation he'd never overlook again. Elise knew about Sarah. Not the tabloid version but the raw truth. He'd told her one evening over a bottle of red wine and silence. She didn't flinch. She didn't pity him. She listened and then said, You must have loved her a lot to survive that kind of breaking. And he had. And he had survived. Work thrived. The library he designed opened in the spring. He stood at the ribbon cutting, watching children run through aisles of books and thought, This is what permanence looks like. Not stone. Not steel. But stories. His name was etched in a plaque near the entrance. Designed with love by D.J. Whitmore. He never told anyone what the love was for. He didn't have to. Sarah too had changed. She'd gotten a teaching position at a local art center. Her work had evolved. Less darkness now, more color. Still chaotic, still emotional, but warmer. Her gallery show in September drew a crowd. And for the first time in years, she stood in a room full of people not as someone's partner or mistake, but as an artist. She didn't date, not seriously. Not yet. There were moments, late-night conversations, shared smiles, but she was still rebuilding herself. Relearning who she was when she wasn't trying to be someone else's everything. And she had forgiven herself. Not all the way. Not fully. But enough to stop waking up in shame. Enough to say, I did wrong. But I am not only my worst moment. One evening she received a package. No return address. Inside was a photo. Prague. The two of them under the astronomical clock. Her laughing. Daniel grinning at her like she hung the stars. On the back his handwriting. We were real. And I'll never forget that. She cried for hours. Not out of pain. Out of gratitude. In January they crossed paths one more time. Not in some romantic twist. No spark. No grand revelation. They were at a mutual friend's wedding. Daniel in a gray suit. Sarah in blue. They hugged. Polite. Familiar. Elise was with him, her hand in his. Sarah smiled at her with no resentment. Only understanding. Later during the reception they sat near each other at the edge of the dance floor. Champagne in hand. Music loud. They spoke like old friends, not broken lovers. Sarah leaned over and asked, "Are you happy?" Daniel paused, thoughtful, then nodded. "Getting there." He looked at her. "You." She smiled. "Finally." And they meant it. The music swelled. Couples danced. They didn't need to. They had already danced their dance, lived their tragedy, learned their lessons. Now they were simply people again. Two souls with a shared history, sitting under fairy lights, letting go of what once was, and welcoming what could still be. Then, ashes of the vow.